Everybody else. There's Trina's not.
Good morning. Yeah, one more person walks in. We'll start.
We'll go ahead and start and just know that the Lord can provide. Oh, here comes Miss Ron.
Morning.
And welcome to this Metro Plan Orlando CAC meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Jeffrey Campbell, and I will be chairing the meeting today. This meeting is fully in person, so all committee members are asked to be present in the Metro Plan Orlando boardroom. We still have virtual participation for the public, however. I'll ask all members to please speak clearly and use your microphones so that those joining us virtually could hear. It's now time for our Pledge of Allegiance. Today, I'll ask our Vice Chair, Dr. Dan Stevens, if he would please honor us with that.
Sure will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. There are two public comment points in our meeting. Members of the public who are here in person and would like to make a comment should submit a speaker card to Ms. Lisa Smith. Those attending on Zoom who want to speak can use the raise hand feature. We also accepted comments by email before the meeting. The November Metro Plan Orlando board meeting was canceled because of Hurricane Nicole. So I will be reporting on today's meeting as well as our October meeting when we meet next week on December 14th. You have something?
Yeah, no.
Dr. Stevens has to leave a little early.
Yes.
So he's had something he wanted to share, so I'll let him go now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm Dr. Stevens with UCF. I was contacted about midsummer by the State Board of the Congress for the New Urbanism, and point of that contact was they wanted me to be the point person at UCF downtown. The state board is bringing the this next year's summit, statewide summit, to UCF downtown. Now, in years past, they've actually brought it to Rollins College and other areas around the state, but this is a big move for us. We're hoping to it'll put UCF and the local community in a positive light. The summit itself is February 16th and 17th. For all you planner-minded folks that are interested in such things, I certainly hope you would go to the CNU website and register for that. The theme is equitable revitalization. And our keynote speaker is Miss Angie Schmidt. So anyway, more information. I won't hold up any more of the committee's time, but thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for letting me make that announcement. Go to the website and it's cnu.org. Okay.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And finally, Mr. Caskey, would you stand up for a second? Today marks an important staff change here at Metro Plan Orlando. Mr. Keith Caskey, Manager of Planning Services, has been a constant presence at our meetings, helping us explain the TIP and its amendments and related projects. But this is his last meeting with us today. He's going to be retiring at the end of the month. The staff has prepared a short video tribute for Mr. Caskey, which we're going to play right now.
Long before there was Metro Plan Orlando, there was Keith Caskey. Also known as the man with the plan. Keith has marked more than 40 years in transportation planning in Central Florida. His work helped define how Central Florida transportation grew and evolved. On Keith's watch, we have expanded our transportation options and found new ways to get around the region. Keith has overseen it, and best of all, explained it for us. That's why we also think of him as the man at the podium. At hundreds of public meetings, Keith has been the one explaining our transportation improvement program. He speaks fluent FDOT. Keith is central to everything we do, but he's never one to grab the spotlight. He just stays in the background, getting things done. But today, we are focusing on Keith because he's leaving us. Yes, he's leaving us for a well-deserved retirement. Best wishes, Keith. We'll miss you.
Nice to know for those people too.
Keith, I know you have a presentation that you're going to share with us today, so we're going to thank you again. But I just want to say now, after more than 40 years of service to our community, thank you for what you've done. Thank you so much. And with that, we'll turn things over to Ms. Mary Ann Horn for our Metro Plan Orlando agenda review today.
Thank you, Chairman Campbell, all the committee members who are joining us both in the room and online. Thank you for being here. And thanks to Leilani Vayonga of our staff for doing the video wizardry on that great little tribute to Keith. And of course, thank you, Keith, for all you have meant to our organization. We really will miss you. In this meeting format, we need a quorum, now 13 members in the room to conduct votes. As always, it is important to RSVP for meetings so that we can prepare. We do still have Zoom and YouTube options available for the public. I'm sorry to report that we are losing some members of this committee. Congratulations are in order for Ms. Maria Cortez and Mr. Jonathan Beltran Torres, who both will be moving into jobs in the Transportation Planning Office at the City of Orlando. They had been interning there. They are both now moving into full-time employment. Unfortunately, since they will be working in transportation for one of our funding partners, the bylaws say that they can no longer serve on this committee. Also, Maria Fernanda Saavedra has resigned with regrets because of a new work schedule that she says does not allow her to make the meetings. And finally, longtime member Hector Lissaswain has resigned from the committee. He also cited work commitments that have routinely conflicted with CAC meetings. I wanted to quote from Hector's very nice resignation note. He says, "I'm proud to have participated and have worked alongside some of the very best in transportation with the CAC and in our region. Thank you for all you do." And we thank him, of course, and all of those members for their service. And I have an idea that he may have been including Keith Caskey as one of the very best in transportation when he wrote that. Osceola County is already at work on a replacement for Mr. Lissaswain's seat. Ms. Cortez, Mr. Torres, and Ms. Saavedra's seats will be part of our annual call for Metro Plan Orlando appointees. So this may be a good time to say that we are getting ready to start advertising to fill our Metro Plan Orlando vacancies. After the beginning of the year, I will be reaching out to some of our current appointees whose 4-year terms have expired to see if they wish to remain. And in the meantime, if you know someone who you think might make a good CAC member, please encourage them to apply on our website or to contact me. I'll be sharing more information about that with you soon. I want to give a shout out to all the members who participated in our events during FDOT Mobility Week. Several of you took part in our webinar and survey on air quality on October 27th. Thank you. And that same day, we co-hosted the Blind Experience at Link Central Station. And there, the CAC was very well represented by Mr. Benjamin Bosley, who was acting in his professional capacity with Lighthouse of Central Florida to guide blindfolded participants across a busy intersection, which helped them understand the challenges of vision impaired pedestrians. He also demonstrated for the attendees how we can all be more effective in helping to guide and direct sight impaired folks. And here he is guiding Mayor Demings across the street. We have no changes to our printed agenda, and so now I would like to ask Ms. Lisa Smith to please call the roll.
Yes, good morning. I'll ask all committee members to keep your microphones off until called. Bobinger,
Here.
Bosley,
Present.
Buttery, Campbell,
Present.
Coleman, Coloco Masat, Cologne, Cortez, present, Council, Davis,
Present.
Henry, Lopez, Mormon, Mott,
Present.
Mueller, Niesman, O'Hanlon, Peters,
Present.
Pigram,
Present.
Pizzo,
Present.
Rumpf,
Yeah, here.
Salas,
Here.
Dr. Shaw, Sabilla, Dr. Stevens,
Present.
Tori Alba, Webster,
Here.
White. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the roll call, and we do have a quorum physically present.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Smith. We will now hear public comments on action items. Do we have anyone online who'd like to speak to any of the items? If so, use the raise hand function on your screen. Press *9 on your phone keypad. When we call your name, the host will unmute your microphone. You will see a button pop up that says the host wants to unmute you. Accept the prompt to activate your microphone. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record, and please hold your comments to 2 minutes. Are there any comments at this time?
There are no hands raised on the virtual side, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have anyone in the boardroom today that would like to make comments? Mr. Lee, we'll recognize you at this point.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Charles Lee, Director of Advocacy of Audubon.
Needs to turn on his mic.
Your microphone,
You need to-
press
In
the
the
center,
middle of the
Center.
screen.
bottom center.
It's got the little button with the mouse speaking. No, it's actually on. the
There you
screen.
There you go.
There you go.
Mhm.
All right.
There you go.
Charles Lee, Director of Advocacy of Audubon, Florida, 1101 Audubon Way, Maitland, Florida. You have a presentation today on the Rock Springs Road and West Orange Trail projects. And the reason that I'm here is that we have looked at the report that has been in progress for some time. And there are some significant environmental concerns with two legs of this trail project that would, in essence, invade parts of Wekiva Springs State Park. Part of the difficulty here is that at the time the park was doing its original planning 25 or more years ago, the knowledge we have about the fragility of sandhill ecological communities was not nearly as well developed as it is today. We now know that activities that may seem passive, particularly such things as wheeled vehicles on a paved trail, may exact a significant toll on certain species of wildlife that are in that area. Basically, what it translates into is crushed baby gopher tortoises, snakes, and other what we call herps for the most part, some mammals, but there is a significant impact. The other concern that is happening with regard to the two segments of this trail that would essentially go into the park, one of them 4/10 of a mile long on Kelly Park Road, the other one about 2.2 miles on Welch Road, is that trails are not what they used to be. Today, the advent of electric bicycles has changed the use of trails markedly. And what once was a very passive, quiet experience of being on the trail, frankly, can be quite a buzzing experience of people coming up behind you. That also amps up the concerns about wildlife. So I just wanted to conclude by saying that we have concerns about this project. We think that they should be carefully examined. We're not sure if it's a good idea for a 12-foot wide trail that will carry high-speed electric bicycles and other traffic to be inserted in the park. Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Lee. Thank you so much. Well, that presentation is coming a little later in our program today, so we'll make sure we think about those things when we get that presentation. Are there any written comments submitted before the meeting?
Mr. Chair, we did not receive any written comments today.
Okay. Well, today we have 4 action items. Our first action item is the approval of our minutes from our October 26th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look at that? And if so, we'll entertain a motion. We have a motion.
Second.
Okay, the name on the first was, and the second. Okay, any discussion on the minutes? Okay, it's time for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposes? Okay, motion carries. Our next item is the recommendation of the TIP to be amended to include 3 projects. Mr. Keith Caskey will provide the information. Mr. Caskey, you have the floor and you have our attention.
Okay, well, good morning. Just wanted to say thank you all again for the kind words. I've really enjoyed working with this group and appreciated all the input over the years. This amendment request today involves 3 transit projects. It includes some additional funding for Lynx's existing limo upgrade project. And then there's a new project for Lynx to purchase 20 electric buses and 5 electric NeighborLink vehicles. And then they're also putting in some additional charging stations for the new vehicles. And then there's a new Lynx planning study for locating bus rapid transit and transit-oriented development. bus rapid transit stations and transit-oriented development along State Road 436, just north of Orlando International Airport. And you all have the information on this in tab 2. So again, unless there's any questions, we're asking for your approval of the amendment.
Okay. I think it's right. We should start right here. Look at Dr. Nancy.
I was just gonna comment that it's a shame Tom O'Hanlon's not here, because he's always been wanting links to go to electric buses, and he misses the one meeting, right?
Yeah,
Well, we have the video.
There we go. That's my only comment,
I
sir.
was wondering if his batteries were dead or the self-driving feature.
Any other questions for Mr. Cancel? Well, we need a motion. Record the names on the motion. Mr. Peters and Mr. Shaw for approval. Any questions or further discussion? That is my honor to say that the motion carries, and we would like to say thank you again.
Thank you.
Our next item is to recommend approval of changes to the 2045 Metro Plan Transportation Plan. Ms. Taylor Laurent of Metro Plan Orlando staff will explain the proposed modification and amendment. Ms. Laurent, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. My name is Taylor Laurent from Metro Plan Orlando, and I'll be walking through the proposed revisions today. Starting with a quick reminder of what two of the main terms that we're going to hear today are: modification, which represents a minor change or relatively small change to the plan, and an amendment, which is a larger or more significant change to the document. Now, while both of these terms have very different definitions, we will be taking them through the exact same process today, presenting them, discussing, and ultimately asking for your recommendation for approval of these revisions. So stepping right into them, we're going to start with a proposed modification to the document that we're classifying as a TIP refresh. We are working to maintain planning consistency between our MTP and the cost feasible plan with our transportation improvement program. And this is an annual refresh that we're doing to ensure that planning consistency and continued alignment. You've seen this in past years since we've adopted our 2045 MTP, and you'll continue to see it until we get to our 2050 document as well. And yes, we are starting to talk about that already. Our second revision is an amendment to incorporate new federal revenues into the MTP. As we have implemented the IIJA, there are additional federal formula funds that are being allocated to our general TMA fund program, as well as new funding through carbon reduction programs. Between these two programs, we are estimating that there will be an additional $54.5 million allocated to our region in total over the next 10 years. Unfortunately, that's not a single year allocation. We're dividing that funding equally between our complete streets, bicycle and pedestrian, as well as TISMO and ITS project needs lists. And with that, we are anticipating that 11 projects will be newly cost feasible with this additional funding. Our third amendment is also to incorporate new funding into the MTP. And this is through federal discretionary grants that have been awarded to several of our partners within the region. So by incorporating these additional fundings, there are no impacts to our existing project cost feasibility. Our fourth revision is also an amendment, and this is to update the segmentation for the Poinciana Parkway project. This project has already been documented as a need in our MTP and the cost feasible plan, so that is not a change. We're simply adjusting the segmentation of the project, splitting it into smaller pieces to better align with the implementation program established by both the Central Florida Expressway Authority as well as the Florida Turnpike Enterprise. So with these changes, there are no impacts to other project cost feasibility. Looking at our fifth amendment, this is an addition of a project into the MTP for a document that is going to be for a project that is being done in coordination with the Poinciana Parkway project. This would be an improvement to County Road 532, the Osceola County Polkline Road. And again, this is being done in coordination with the Poinciana Parkway project. And with the addition of this project to the document, there would be no impacts to existing project cost feasibility. And then our last item on our agenda today is a series of amendments as well as modifications that are being done for planning consistency, as we have received requests from our partner agencies over the past few months. So I'll go through and just kind of outline what some of those changes are, the common themes you'll see if you look through the documentation. You can also follow along with this in your agenda under tab 3. So for the modifications, you'll predominantly see changes to project descriptions to specifically reference safety improvements or operational and safety improvements. You'll see changes to include local road names in addition to our state or county road designations to make our tables a little bit easier to navigate, as well as moving projects between cost feasible lists within our MTP to better represent the implementing agency. So again, these are minor modifications, no changes to existing cost feasibility. When it comes to our amendments, you'll predominantly see 2 types of changes. The first is an adjustment to project limits to either extend a project to cover a larger geographic area, or the opposite, splitting an existing need into multiple phases for better implementation later on. The other amendment you will see is a series of removing duplicate project needs within the document to where they've been incorporated into other projects or other planned work. So again, those amendments are purely administrative and are not intended to impact existing cost feasibility. And before I forget, there was a request at our TISMO and TAC meetings last Friday that was recommended by both committees to remove an additional duplicate project that was identified in Osceola County. So this is a Poinciana Parkway Complete Streets project from Lysia Brown Road to Trafalgar Boulevard, MTP ID 4020. So with this revision, there would be no impacts to existing cost feasibility as well. So with that, we are requesting your recommendation for approval of the plan revisions as they've been presented today. I will be available to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for your expertise in these matters. We appreciate you. Okay, questions for Ms. Loren? Ms. Rump?
Yes, good morning. Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the presentation.
Not quite. Your microphone. There you go.
Let's try this again. Okay, yeah, I can hear myself now. Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question about Amendment 5. I don't have it before me again, but how are you able to do the roadway improvement without any additional cost?
So that is a project that's going to be done by the Central Florida Expressway Authority. They have, to my knowledge, found additional funding for that, and it does not impact any other projects within the program.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions? Okay,
That was motion to approve then.
okay. We'll entertain them.
That's all right, you got it.
Did you have Ms. Mott? Yeah. Okay, okay, so
Second.
motions, we have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposes? Motion carries. Ms. Leonard, thank you so much. Our next action item is the election of our 2023 CAC officers. The CAC Officer Collection Committee has met and proposed a slate of officers for 2023. I'd like to call a member from the subcommittee, Mr. Jeffrey Bobinger, to give us a report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to everybody. November 17th, the CAC Officer Selection Subcommittee met to review the proposed nominations for the position of CAC Chair and Vice Chair for 2023. This meeting was held virtual by the following members in attendance: RJ Mueller, Marianne Horn, Kathy Goldfarb, myself, and Mr. Caspar Shaw was unable to attend. Casmore, I'm very sorry.
More cash.
More cash. Always want more cash. Gotcha. All right. The subcommittee had 2 current members show interest in the positions of chair and vice chair. As we know, these positions are highly important to our ability to keep our meetings organized and on track, as the time of our members, citizens, and presenters is very important and not to mention very valuable. Both members showing interest made the subcommittee's job quite easy. Both have served our committee for years and have continued to offer amazing leadership for this committee and to be successful in our commitment to provide informative and educational guidance for the Metro Planning Commission. Our current chairman, Jeffrey Campbell, has expressed interest in serving as chair for one more year, which has been reviewed and is accepted through our bylaws. Our current vice chair, Dr. Dan Stevens, has also expressed in serving again another term as vice chair. We as the subcommittee feel both candidates have done such an amazing job in their roles in 2022 and could continue to lead us through 2023 in those same positions as well. So as the subcommittee stands, please join us in thanking our nominations of current Chairman Jeffrey Campbell and Vice Chair Dan Stevens for their continued commitment to the CAC and dedication in guiding us to 2023. I will now turn this over to our chair for any comments and approval by the board.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bobinger, and thank you for the whole committee. Do we have any questions for Mr. Bobinger? Are there any nominations from the floor? Well, we just need. Okay, well, at this point, I take a nomination, take the, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposes? Well, with that, Dr. Stevens, congratulations.
You as well.
We'll serve another year. Thank you so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, he just made a nomination to close the floor, so that's just closing the floor, then you need to call for.
Thank you. That's what we needed. We
yeah,
need
point
an
of
actual
order.
motion.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Parliamentarian. Thank you. Sharp, very good. Thank you.
Teresa Mott anxiously second the motion. Looking forward to your leadership.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposes? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Mott. And thank you
Now we're
again.
good. Now we're good.
official.
Now we're good.
It's official. Okay, very good. All right, that was our last action item. We have two presentations. Our first presentation is on Rock Springs Road and West Orange Trail. We have Miss Amy Siemens of VHB, who will update us on Rock Spring Road and the West Orange Trail extension in Apopka. The floor is yours.
Okay, am I on? There we go. Good morning. I'm Amy Sermons with VHB, and I'm here to talk to you about two studies we've been conducting for Metro Plan Orlando, the Rock Springs Road Study and the West Orange Trail Extension Study. So I'm going to give you an overview of the studies as well as what we've heard from the public throughout the process, talk about the recommendations for both of these projects, and then talk about our next steps. So here we are in the process. On the right of the screen, you can see we're at the beginning of the total process from the planning stage. Following planning, we have design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction. On the left, you can see how adjacent the two projects are to each other, the West Orange Trail shown in green and the Rock Springs Road in blue. Throughout the length of this project, over the last year or so, we've done quite a bit of public engagement. We've held two community meetings, one in January of this year and one in September. We also held three survey opportunities. We did a kickoff survey at the beginning of the project and then two additional surveys after each of the public meetings. So I'm first going to focus on the Rock Springs Road study, and then we'll move to the West Orange Trail next. The purpose of the Rock Springs Road study is to look at access management and roadway improvements. We are looking at a couple of different things, which I'll go over: the Welch Road and Rock Springs Road intersection and some work on Sandpiper Street. Moving first, let's look at the Welch Road intersection recommendations. This again is Welch Road and Rock Springs Road intersection. We'll look at adding dual southbound left turn lanes, adding traffic separators at each of the legs of the intersection to keep vehicles from crossing over into opposing lanes. We're providing through lanes for both eastbound and westbound traffic, as well as dual westbound dedicated right turn lanes. From the public surveys, each of these recommendations, we'll walk through what we heard from the public. You can see that 70% of the respondents were in favor of this recommendation. We did get about 11% that had no opinion or were neutral, and 19% who didn't like it. Of those who didn't like it, what we heard essentially was requests for additional bike lanes along the roadway. We heard a desire for emphasis on pedestrian safety as a priority. And also several noted opposition related to the trail. There was a little bit of comments in the Rock Springs Road section that were related to the trail. And then some noted some previous work that was done in the area to try to fix some of the problems with the westbound dual right turn lane not working. We have our proposal here provides those westbound right turn lanes. However, we're providing additional turning radius and adding the traffic separators to make it a more operational intersection. Now we're moving a little bit further north of the Welch Road intersection. This is the Publix north entrance at the plaza. Our recommendations for this intersection is to add a signal. We're also adding a dedicated southbound left turn lane with the raised traffic separator. Adding westbound right and left turn lanes. Currently heading out of the plaza, it's one lane. This will allow traffic to separate as they're heading out of the plaza. Also, we'll be adding new pedestrian crosswalks. The survey results for this intersection, you can see 67% like this recommendation. About 15% were neutral with no opinion and 18% that did not like it. We did get questions about the need for an intersection, or sorry, for a signal at this intersection. Those that were opposed noted the impact to the Wekiva Springs State Park, which were really unrelated to this intersection. There was concerns about resulting access change. We got a lot of questions about if I'm coming from Marco's Pizza, how do I get to my house, or how do I get to the other direction? And then there was some concern about additional congestion due to adding another signal on the roadway. Our next recommendation is to add a mid-block crosswalk south of Tanglewood Drive, which is north of the Publix north entrance. This recommendation is going to be kind of a phased approach. We want to go ahead and put the intersection or the signal in at Publix. See how the community works with this. If they're using that as the crosswalk, we may not need to do this mid-block crosswalk, but we wanted to go ahead and add it into the study to get the cost and all the impacts. So you can see 46% of the survey respondents were in favor. We got 31% that were neutral and 23% that did not like it. We did hear from those that did not like it that the crosswalk would be better served at the proposed signal that at the Publix intersection. Also, those that were opposed were concerns for traffic backup with adding that mid-block crossing, as well as concerns for pedestrian safety crossing the road with just the use of, we are proposing a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. There was concerns for not having a full signal and the safety of pedestrians. So now moving further south on Rock Springs, where Rock Springs Road actually turns into Park Avenue at Sandpiper Street. Our recommendations here are to realign Sandpiper Street. Currently it is skewed intersection, so we're going to realign it and also look at adding a signal at this intersection. To the east and the west of Park Avenue, we have currently there's sidewalks only on the south side as you head to the west. So we're proposing to add sidewalk on the north. If you head east on Sandpiper, there's currently sidewalks on the north and not the south. So we're filling those gaps with sidewalk, not Sandpaper. Public survey, 64% liked this option, 23% were neutral, and 13% did not like it. Those that were opposed were concerns about the realignment and the signal adding more traffic to the surrounding residential area. As you continue east, there's a lot of neighborhoods. Also, there was additional requests for additional safety elements at the trail crossing. On the east side of Park Avenue is the existing West Orange Trail, and it crosses over Sandpiper in this location. There was also a request for addition of bike lanes. Additional feedback we heard in general, I'm sorry, let's just go through Lester Road. Heading back north to Lester Road, which is the northern end of the Rock Springs Road improvements. Our recommendations are to extend the turn lane storage on Lester Road, updating the intersection striping. And that's it. I do want to mention some of the additional feedback we heard from the survey. Again, there was a lot of comments about safety elements for the existing trail crossings, brighter sidewalks over the driveway. So basically repainting some of those crosswalks that exist out there. There were suggestions for signal coordination throughout the corridor to help traffic move through more efficiently, and requests for shade trees along the trail. and also desire for traffic calming measures and lower speed limit along the corridor. So anticipated impacts, we did a full analysis. There's minimal impacts environmentally and right away as well. Estimated construction cost for the Rock Springs Road improvements as were shown are at $6.5 million. Again, this is for construction. The Sandpiper Street construction estimate is at $1.6 million. So now we'll move over to the West Orange Trail Extension Study. The purpose of this project is basically to fill the gap in the West Orange Trail. Currently, it ends on Rock Springs Road at Lester Road, and then connect that up to the proposed Wekiva Trail Park at Kelly Park Road. We're also looking at 2 spur connections. I'll give you a quick overview of the recommended trail routes. Number 1 here is that main connection to fill that gap in the West Orange Trail from Lester Road again up to Kelly Park Road. Number 2 is the Welch Road spur, which would connect the trail over to the Wekiva Springs State Park entrance. And then spur number 3 is along Pumpkin Road to connect from Rock Springs Road over to Wolf Lake Elementary and Middle Schools. So we'll focus on right now on the Rock Springs Road, the main connection to fill that gap in the trail. We are recommending to run the trail along the east side of Rock Springs Road for the full alignment. As we come to Kelly Park Road, the trail would then run along the south side of Kelly Park Road. And the dashed line on the top is the proposed Wekiva Trail where those 2 will connect. Our survey results, 75% related to this specific trail piece, 75% were in favor. 8% recommended a different trail alignment, and 17% do not support the trail alignment at all. What we did here on that specifically is request to have the trail run along the park edge and away from the roadway. There was concerns for cyclist safety as we run along Rock Springs Road. There's a lot of roadway and driveway crossings. And then some were just full on opposed to funding for the trail project in general. Now moving to the Welch Road spur. This alignment is going to run along the north side of Welch Road from Rock Springs Road until it gets to the Sweetwater Park Village, which I'll show you on the next slide. This does require some realignment of a portion of Welch Road. You can see that on the bottom of the screen here. The reason we did that was to avoid the wall of Wekiva Glen subdivision. We're able to keep it mostly within the existing right-of-way and not impact that subdivision wall. Also, you'll see there's a potential for some natural habitat observation areas along this trail. And that's overlooking one of the lakes. This is the area where the trail would run off of Welch Road, run behind Sweetwater Park Village, and connect back to Wekiva Springs Road all along the park boundary until it gets to the entrance of the park. Public surveys, 60% were in favor of this alignment. 11% do want a different trail alignment, and 29% did recommend or did not support this trail at all. I do want to point out the alternatives that we looked at during the study. The other alternative was to continue down Welch Road until you come to Wekiva Springs Road, and then meet up to the park along the park boundary. The opposition that we heard from the survey is opposition to running behind the Sweetwater Park Village. There was concerns for homeowner safety and property values coming down, as well as concern for additional traffic for people maybe parking in the subdivision in order to access the trail. We also heard concerns from impacts to wildlife in the state park, just like we heard from Mr. Lee earlier. And then there were some concerns with the habitat observation areas, and that those will disturb the habitat and compromise the safety of youth campers. There's a youth camp. Some felt that you might be able to see into the youth camp from these observation areas. Now I'm going to move back up north to the Pumpkin Road Trail Spur. The recommendation for here is as we head west on Rock Springs Road, the trail will run along the south side of Pumpkin from Rock Springs to Vic Road. There's an existing signal at Vic Road, and that's where we will cross a protected crossing of Pumpkin to get the trail to the north side, and it will continue on the north all the way over to the schools. We did get 83% of the surveys were in favor of this alignment, and then we did get a small 3% that recommended a different trail alignment. and then 14% that did not recommend the trail alignment at all. Those that wanted the different trail alignment commented that they would like to see the trail on the north side of Pumpkin, the entire length of the trail. Some additional feedback overall on the trails that we heard from our survey is requests for trail parking and trailheads, some suggested crosswalks between Vic and Rock Springs on that Pumpkin Road. We also heard a lot of requests for trail amenities, such as signage, lighting, parking, cycle tracks, vending stations, you name it. There was a request for all of the amenities that go along with trails. Anticipated impacts for these, this is for the 3 different segments that we talked about, is relatively low. We do know that there's concerns for, as Mr. Lee brought up, for the concerns for bringing possibly other vehicles into the area and impacting the wildlife. I do want to point out that throughout the length of the study, we have been coordinating with the park and with DEP. They've been involved in the development of the alternatives, and they have been in favor of providing easement on the edge of the park. Essentially, their main thing is they don't want to provide any additional access points to the park. So as long as we have a fence to separate the trail from the park, they were okay with this option. There's some right-of-way needs you can see on the screen, but getting down to the estimated construction cost, the segment from Rock Springs Road, or the main gap, is looking at about $5 million of construction. The Welch Road spur is at 5.2 million, and the Pumpkin Road is at 5.5 million. I do want to point out these do not include right-of-way costs, but are strictly for construction. So we're here. This is our study schedule. We began back in March of last year. We're at the end, and we'll be wrapping up this month. So we're finalizing our study documents and finalizing all of our presentations and taking our feedback. So that's why we're here today. This is Taylor's information. Taylor is our Metro Plan project manager. Excuse me. And so that's all I have for now. I'm going to open up for questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Simmons, for that. It seems overall there's great support for the changes and modifications. I was going to ask you about the environmental impacts that you said low, but that was low earlier, but I see some of the mitigation things that you're doing, like you mentioned, the fencing and the input of the community around it. Any other questions? Okay, so let's start. Let's go this way this time. Okay, right on time.
All right.
Okay.
Quick question. I liked your presentation. When you were talking about the roadway sections earlier, you said one of the concerns was more traffic, but isn't that in fact just more congestion? I mean, it's not like the addition of a light isn't going to produce more cars there. It's just going to allow people to wait a longer time. And so really that's the crux of their argument, is that they don't want to spend that extra 15 seconds at a light, right?
Correct. Absolutely. More congestion versus.
Just wanted to point that out.
Yes,
Okay.
good point.
Thank you.
And we did get some conflicting, because we did hear from some comments that people wanted to slow the traffic down. So
I heard that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. C. Mr. Pegram. Well, we're going to go in order. Why don't we back, your card fell, so let's go ahead and support you.
For the trail, what kind of, like, is there gonna be some kind of buffer or separation from the lanes, or what are the safety measures for the bike? Oh.
Right. Great question. It depends on some of the areas as we run along the Rock Springs Road segment. It's very tight in there, but there's definitely, we're following FDM recommendations separating from the roadway. As we get into the segments where we have more space, potentially, that 50-foot easement is what we're looking at along the park boundary. And that allows for the trail is only going to be about 12 feet, but that easement allows for the fencing, for separation from the roadway, separation from the homes, and potentially some landscape buffers. All of those details will be figured out in the next stage in design, should everything move forward.
And that road, I'm not familiar, like, I don't go by this area a lot, but what is the miles per hour in the part that will not be fully separated?
I think we're at 40 miles per hour. Yes. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cortez. Mr. Pegram, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. For myself being a multimodal advocate for this committee, it's great to be talking about electric buses and trails and have that diversity in these meetings rather than just road programs. So I appreciate it. So one question on each on Rock Springs, for that study in, I think the Leicester exhibit that you had up for Leicester Road. If we could pull that up again. I think part of the scope that you described as a generic example for the rest of the projects, there's an allusion to, I think, striping improvements. Yes, number 2. So on the northern and southern limits of that exhibit, it shows kind of that shared mixed use middle lane that has another unofficial name that I won't make part of public record.
Thank you.
I would just hope that anytime we have the opportunity to update existing striping, that we take into consideration not having those. And I think that's been brought up as previous safety meetings and safety topics that we've had here, that when we have the opportunity to provide directional striping in those middle lanes rather than mixed use.
In this area, actually, I guess there is a small segment as we, just south of Leicester is the public's entrance. There is a very small section that has the center turn lanes. In order to provide access, we are adding those traffic separators further to the south to avoid all of those conflicts. And then, as you mentioned, as you go further north, there is existing center turn lanes, and the corridor, as you continue even further north, does have a mixture of medians and the center turn lanes. We had to balance that, providing access to, you can see there's a lot of subdivisions on either side of the road, but providing access to those subdivisions as well. But we did reduce a lot of the center turn lanes through this section.
And then
Understand your
this,
concern.
on the second presentation, thank you. This may be more of a Wekiva Springs operational question, but knowing that entry and exit into that facility becomes, and I think the kind word would be congested. Was the trail system ever looked at as an operational improvement to alleviate congestion on that road and provide an alternative parking location, and then people could enter the park with bikes and motorized vehicles? Like, was that ever considered as part of this, or is their operation and their operational needs not part of this?
I think that is the goal, is to provide this opportunity for people could park maybe at one of the other existing trailheads or at the Publix, or if people will park if they want to ride their bikes in or walk into the park, and provide that access into the park, because you're right, it's very congested. And that is one thing we heard from the community, especially that Sweetwater Park Village, is that people are waiting to get in the park in the morning and it backs up, and people are actually stacking in their neighborhood as they're waiting for the park to come in or park to open up. And so this provides a potential another opportunity for people to get in by foot or by bicycle.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, I just didn't know if it's a future phase to provide like a park and ride essentially, or like if it's not an intended function of that, it's just a nice, potential byproduct of it.
Gotcha. We did not look at trailheads, essentially, is what would be considered. We did not look at those amenities as part of this study, mainly looking at connecting the trail itself.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Beeman. Mr. Bowman, did she take your question? Okay. All right. Ms. Okay, all right. Ms. Pizzo, you're recognized.
Thank you. Good presentation on both of them. 3 questions, and they're going to be quick. And I know you're going to blow through them. The first, on Rock Springs Road, you talked about a dedicated right turn lanes. Are these going to be signalized?
Yes. So I can go back to that. Signaling, we talked about dedicated right turn lanes at Welch Road, as well as at the intersection, the new signal that's proposed at the Publix North entrance. It is currently, so yes, this will be signalized right here. And then heading back to Welch is already signalized. But we're providing 2 right turn lanes. This is a very heavy movement at this intersection, is heading westbound to northbound.
We know we love those free flow rights. Right. Scary. Second one, talked about the mid-block crossings, and that folks were concerned about the slowing up the traffic, the flow of traffic, and pedestrians actually not being recognized. Has there been a consideration of an education program? I spend a good bit of time over on the West Coast along Gulf Drive, And when I first started going over there, it was flag up. We're talking a 6-lane road with that funky middle lane. As soon as that flag went up, both lanes, both directions stopped. There was a heavy education program over there. And those are now signalized. I think they're every half mile over there or so. They have those mid-block crossings for the pedestrians, flashing lights with the median for them to stop, make sure that they're looking to make sure no traffic is coming. Incredible education program again. And I see that that's very much needed in our area. And I think that would help tremendously in situations such as this, where you don't need another traffic light, just education. That's more of a comment, I guess, from me. My last question is on the West Orange Trail was, what was the reason the public gave for wanting to have the trail on the north side of Pumpkin Road? Just out of curiosity.
Basically just so they wouldn't have to cross over the road. I think there was maybe some misunderstanding that the crossing wouldn't be at the signal. Or I guess really just the less amount of times you can cross over the road would be best. But the reason we have it on the south side is due to right-of-way impacts. There's a lot of impacts putting it on the north side.
Thank you.
Okay, we're all done over here. So now let's go this side. Mr. Davis, you're recognized.
Thank you, sir.
Your microphone, sir.
There we go. Thank you, sir. My question is more generally related to them being able to put the electric bicycles on there. I'm not sure how they don't just qualify as a motorized vehicle and be disallowed the same as any other motorized vehicle. There's no chance that they should be allowed on there. They have to be a hazard to everybody else.
That we hear that quite often, and that's a policy consideration, and of course enforcement too. So you know, I don't know if we have anything to add on that, but that, I mean, it really comes down to enforcement.
Well, that would be true if the guy's riding a dirt bike down the
Right.
road. At least you could hear that coming up behind you. The electric one, you can't even hear.
Right.
That's a struggle on the beach. That's a struggle on the sidewalks. When they're going 30 miles an hour and a child is running across, it's a concern. It really is.
Right.
And you're right. There's no sound. It's silent.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Next. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning again. Thanks for the presentation. I got a question. What was the purpose for the raised traffic separator? Because of, has there been accident in that area?
Yes. So if I can get back to specifically at that intersection, because you have the Publix Plaza, which includes a lot of other businesses, and on the northeast quadrant, you've also got a Walgreens. You've got a lot of people that are trying to cross directly across, taking a left out. So this prevents somebody to come out of the plaza and try to take a left when you've got, through traffic coming, and then it ends up just causing a bottleneck as well as a safety concern. So what essentially people would come out of the plaza. Let me see if I can get back over here. Come out of the plaza,
Okay, yeah.
take a right and go up, do a U-turn.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mott?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Excellent presentation. I have a lot of thoughts I'm reconciling here, so I beg for your patience with me on this. And I can tell you, I think it's great that the time that Metro put in to do the studies, I think that's great, to look at the two different, looking at the data from the two work sessions that they did. It's interesting to hear that when I'm, as the representative for the city of Apopka, hearing different things from the constituents in terms of their concern roughly in reference to the Wekiva Springs area. There's been, I can say I've received calls. I've been in public settings and have had constituents express opposition to the wildlife disruption. Of course, we're not in a perfect world. We know we can't satisfy everybody. We can't please everybody with every situation. But I just want to make an emphatic plea that we are mindful of the disruption that may be impacted, the wildlife that may be disrupted by this project. I know moving forward, a lot of people tend to say, oh, not in my backyard. I get that. We all understand that. We can relate to situations like that. just when it comes to a situation, let's say, where we've already, we know that it's gonna be moving forward. What are some of the things that have been taking place with regards to, let's say, their concern for wildlife disruption? Where are we on that with how we're gonna address that? What are some of the solutions for that, if you don't mind, please?
Sure, absolutely. I do, I don't think I talked about it early on in the main connection down Rock Springs
Yes.
Road. We did study some alternatives that did connect in adjacent to the park. That was in the Orange County Trail Master Plan, was to look at these different alternatives. So we did, in that segment, kept everything away from the park. However, there's a small segment, as Mr. Lee also pointed out, along Rock Springs where the park does abut Rock Springs Road. So there's a small portion where it'll be adjacent to the park. But as far as the wildlife go, essentially, especially on the adjacent to the park, there's currently fencing adjacent to the park, which is how the park deals with that. We know that wildlife is going to go over the fence and whatnot, but we would basically need to work with the park to find the park, and which is also FDEP, to find a solution that's amenable both to the park as well as the homeowners. So moving that fence as they currently use for the park, basically to whether it's the north side of the trail. That's what they're using out there right now. We did hear from a lot of the folks, especially in Sweetwater Park Village, that they like that the wildlife is coming into their backyard, and we're concerned about not having that situation. So as you said, we kind of can't please everybody, but we're definitely trying to find that balance between making sure we're providing the amenity for the region, as well as making sure we're protecting wildlife and not impacting the community.
And of course, obviously, the data obviously is going to represent the people that participated, mindful of the fact that that's not the community at large. For truly, it's not. So it was just interesting to see that as well. And I appreciate you sharing those figures for me. Also, I'd just like to request, if we can have both the presentation as presented today.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Good. Looks like we made the entire loop. Haven't heard from our newer members. Mr. Coleman, anything? Any questions at all? Ms. Niesman? Okay, Ms. Niesman, you are recognized.
As I've worked out in Lake Nona, is when crosswalks are close to light or signals that people tend to look over the actual crosswalk. So was there any conversation as to how to ensure that drivers, as they're coming down, are aware of the crosswalk? And I'm mainly talking about individuals who probably aren't on this corridor often, but how to ensure that they're aware that a pedestrian is crossing the road, when majority, just by default, most people just look straight ahead to the light.
Right, and that's a great point. Again, this crossing, this mid-block crossing, is going to be kind of a phased approach if it even goes in. If we find that the community is using the signal already at the public's entrance, then we may not need this mid-block crossing. However, if this is to go in, currently we're proposing what's called an RRFB, a rapid rectangular flashing beacon, which is that picture on the bottom left. And so a pedestrian would push the button and then the lights would flash to get the attention of the vehicles. Whenever this gets to the next phase, there may be new technology. So this isn't set in stone, as this is what we're going to do. We'll continue, the design phase will continue to look at that and see what the latest and greatest is for that. So, but that is the intent. It's not just a crosswalk without any kind of activated signal or activated noticing, I guess I'll say.
And just before I leave, I would like to recommend point out, if there is the opportunity in the decision is to place the crosswalk there, if there's any exploration of a raised crosswalk, again, just for vehicles. I have little ones and I've tried to do it on a busy road, and sometimes we barely miss the cars, so.
Right, I understand.
And we have one similar to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
A good question. We all like to hear the variety of concerns and ideas. Ms. Sermon, that was a great presentation. Thank you so very much for that.
Thank you, David. Just wanting to double dip.
Oh,
One last question. I missed the funding source. Sorry, I missed the funding source.
The study itself was federally funded. Currently, the next phases are not funded. So that's, Metro Plan will be working with the
Okay.
city and the county on getting these funded.
So I didn't miss the funding source. There isn't one.
It just isn't one.
Okay.
And I miss Ms. Mormon over here.
Thank you. My question is related to the path going across the street from the schools for being in such close proximity to young children. Is that something that's typical, or was there some study that was done around what impact it would have to the children when they're coming out of school? Is there a security issue with having an increased number of traffic around a school zone?
Actually, for the Pumpkin Road spur, that piece connecting, the intent is actually for the families, the students to be able to use the trail to get to school and provide additional mode for families to get to school. So I believe it's already fenced. So, currently, however, people access the school wouldn't change, and the trail will run along the outside of that fence.
Okay. Well, again, it looks like we've got a great amount of support from the survey. And thank you again for your presentation. Great
Thanks for
job.
having us.
Okay. Our next presentation, and it's a two-part presentation from Miss Catherine Alexander Corbin of FDOT District 5 and Mr. COC Fine of Florida Turnpike Enterprise, who will give the overview. You have the floor and our attention.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kathy Alexander Corbin, the program management administrator at District 5. And today I'll just be sharing information on our tentative work program and highlighting some key projects for the upcoming 5 years for you all. So the FDOT work program is a plan that represents the projects and activities that we have planned for the upcoming 5 years. And this would be the fiscal 5 years, which begins July 1st of each year and runs through June 30th of the following year. It represents projects, public transit projects, seaport, airport, and rail projects, and activities such as the transportation planning, transportation systems and management operations, engineering design, as well as right-of-way activities, acquisition, construction, and maintenance activities. We build our tentative work program in collaboration with our local partners and the priorities for the region, as well as our metropolitan and transportation planning organizations. And that compiles the 5-year tentative work program, along with the priorities for the district and our strategic intermodal systems, FDOT priorities as well. In the last few years, FDOT has made an improvement of moving all of our work program public hearings online into one single platform. So I'm going to be highlighting just some projects today, but you are more than welcome, and I encourage to go out to the website that you see here at the bottom of that first left-hand column. It has all of the district work program public hearing documents. It has all the programming for the projects for District 5, as well as lots of information, good information and resource to how we build the tentative work program. Some important key dates that I'll mention here is we have our public comment deadline, December 23rd. The Florida Transportation Commission will be reviewing the tentative work program. That public hearing is March 6th. Central office submits each district's, let me back up, each district builds their own tentative work program for the region. All of these are combined come January, and they are submitted to central office as well for the executive review, legislative and budget review. We have sessions starting March 7th and 1 through May 5th. Ultimately, the governor will adopt the tentative work program July 1st of next year. Fiscal year 22 certainly has been interesting in terms of our project costs. We have seen significant increases on our projects over the last year, on average about 24%. This is mostly due to inflationary impacts as well as supply chain challenges that we have seen. Premium cost increases, items such as our asphalt, our steel, electrical components that we use on many of the items along our roadways have really cost our increases for project costs. For our contractors, it has been difficult to maintain their long-term estimates for items because of the volatility in the pricing. So we have seen augmented project unknowns in our projects as well. We've had limited competition in the last year. We've had single bids with really high prices because of all these items that I mentioned earlier. And it has made it really difficult for us to come up with some kind of trend of assessment for forecasting and projecting out what our project costs are going to be, given the current financial kind of environment that we're in with all these, with the inflation and supply chain challenges. We have really had to look significantly in managing our contingency and what can we do to put out projects that will increase competition and really lower the prices from what we've seen in the increases. Right-of-way impacts as well. Real estate prices have increased about 15% in Central Florida. And you compound that with the material premium pricing as well as labor shortages. And that also has increased our severance damage and appraisal costs tied to real estate. Our program is supported by forecasts from state and federal funding. We have to build a plan that is balanced to the available resources as well as revenues and allocations, and we have to meet certain statutory programs and target areas. Our resurfacing program, that's the largest for our work program. It's basically maintaining our pavements and our roadways. That increased over the last cycle, so that impacted the funding that we have available overall. We also had changes in the revenue and surcharge projections, although the numbers are much better than we have seen in the last couple of years coming out of the post-pandemic. They were better than anticipated. However, they went back and adjusted some of those factors for the increase for the near term because of the inflationary impacts that we have seen. So those were reduced some. In 2021, we did have the bipartisan infrastructure law, also known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That provided an additional $3.5 billion overall to the state FDOT. That's a 35% increase from the FAST Act in 2015. We also have new federal formula programs that really they go towards climate improvement, improving resiliency, as well as reducing carbon reduction. We have programs in resiliency, carbon reduction, bridge rehab and repairs, as well as electric vehicle. And there are opportunities, a lot more opportunities for federal fund competitive grant applications as well. So that is really good to be able to offset some of these increases that we have seen. When we balance the tentative, we have to take all of this into consideration. What we really try to do is maintain our project commitments as well as cost increases. We leverage the fund sources. So it's nice to see that there's new funds there that we could utilize to help carry some projects through, even though we're seeing that these projects are costing more right now. We assess our district needs, and we did have to limit any new projects into the tentative because we needed to make do with what is available. So we really focus on safety and maintenance and preservation projects. Overall, we really minimize project impacts. We tried to avoid to the extent possible any deferrals and deletions for projects that were already included in our tentative 5-year work program. Here you see the overall for the counties of Orange, Osceola, and Seminole. You see it's over $1.6 billion on the breakdown for each of the years provided for you. And in terms of the types of projects, you could see that we're almost 200 million for safety projects, over 200 million for capacity projects, preservation around the same figure, multimodal. That's really about $789 million. This includes for any links as well as airports. There's funding, significant funding in our work program for those multimodal operations. Then we have our bike ped, close to $50 million, and miscellaneous $152 million spread over the 5 years. That would be rest areas, maintenance, operations, anything else that kind of falls outside of the other main categories. Overall, 18 priority projects to the tune of about $250 million. This includes program in our tentative. Moving on to some of the key projects that we want to highlight today. We have wrong way driving detection is going along the ramps on I-4 from the Osceola-Polk County line to the Seminole County line. The construction for this is planned in fiscal year 24, which is the first year of our tentative. We have a resurfacing project along State Road 436. The design is funded in 24, construction in 26, and $11 million is programmed for that project. We have State Road 50 over on the east side of the county. This is the widening from Chulota Road to 520. Construction is programmed for fiscal year 28. We have a couple of we have a roadway safety improvement on the left-hand side there. This is 438 from Lake Stanley Road to Hiawassee Road. Design is funded in 25 and construction in 27. And then we have another resurfacing project, State Road 426, Fairbanks Road from Park Avenue to Lakeland Avenue. The design for that is in 24 with construction in 26. These projects are projects that have been coordinated with our local agencies, also known as our LAP projects. First one on the left, Shingle Creek and Alhambra Drive to Old Winter Garden Road. Design is in 26, construction is in 28. And then we have University Boulevard and Dean Road intersection improvement. The construction for that is funded in 24. And then we have a bike path trail project, Orange County Gap Segment 2 from Hiawassee Road to north of State Road 414. This has construction funded in 26, the tune of $9 million. Moving on to Osceola, on the left-hand side, we see US 1792 John Young Parkway at Pleasant Hill. This is actually, you'll see later that it appears as it's a deletion, but it's not. It's a different sequence number. -6 was there originally last year. It is now a -7 and funding has been moved to this project. The project still remains. Right away is program 24 through 26 and construction in 27. And then we have a transportation safety operational improvement project down in the southeast region of the district and State Road 60 passing lanes. Design is in 24, right away 24 through 25, and construction is in 25. And a significant resurfacing project, US 192, construction in 25 of over $24 million. For Seminole County, State Road 434, there's a resurfacing project from State Road 436 to Mobile Avenue. Construction for that is in 28. And we have some additional right-of-way funding that was funded for the State Road 434 improvement. There's $1.9 million that was included for additional right-of-way on that project. We have pedestrian detection system also for our intelligent transportation system improvement that is going on, that will be constructed on along State Road 436 from North Lake Boulevard to Boston Avenue. Construction for this is in 24, a little less of $1 million. We did have some deferrals, but these deferrals are more so for project readiness, incorporate some more time to get the projects out. These were coordinated with our local agencies. 3 of these are bike path projects that you see, and 1 is an urban corridor improvement project. They all remain within the tentative work program. In terms of a few projects for the district, we had 3 of these projects. Actually, all of them are only moving out 1 year, and this was strictly for project readiness. There were some additional safety and improvement items that were requested to be added to the project, so affected the schedule. So they all moved out 1 year. They all still remain within the work program. On the bottom right, there is a bridge deferral that was to accommodate funding for another project to take place in place of this one. However, again, this project still remains in the tentative. And I mentioned earlier, we did have the deletion for the -6 of the John Young Parkway and Pleasant Hill project. However, the -7 is what's included now under a new segment number, so the project remains. And then we had 437-200-1 Osceola County. That segment, or FM, I should say, was deleted because it was incorporated into the -2. So almost like musical FM numbers. The work is being deleted under this project, but it is included under the -2, which is program. So also still remains in the tentative work program. And with that, I'll thank you for your time, and I'll go ahead and answer any questions you might have.
Well, Ms. Alexander Corbin, thank you for your time and your presentation. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, questions? You're ready.
Thank you. I had a question in regards to the budget. It for multimodal had the highest amount allocated to it, but I was wondering, I don't know if airport. Oh, is it on? It's on. Okay, I'm just kind of far. Sorry. For the I don't know if is airport under multimodal, or what is the percentage of, okay, and then so in multimodal, like what is the breakdown of percentage of the different modes that fall into that and how the budget is?
We could certainly provide that. We have that all in detail. The multimodal will include anything like our bus transportation systems, the airport. The bulk of that you see was grant funding that was received by MCO, Sanford Airport, Kissimmee Airport. So there, and then Lynx also had a significant grant that was associated to them that contributed to that amount.
So right now, there's no exact breakdown on how it might be.
Oh, I don't know. I would not be able to tell you exactly what it is, but I can get that for you and we'll share it.
Okay, thank you. And then, sorry, one last. And then for bike and ped was in the same budget, was the lowest one allocated. with in the budget, and as you mentioned, right-of-way acquisition has increased. So has there been any talks of maybe increasing that budget to when projects are made that's being taken into account right away and just having more pedestrian and bike lanes that are protected with the right of way, and so.
This is an extraction of the bike and peds. We break things items by work mix. So these would be items that would be specific for bike and ped. So they could be bike and path trails. However, we incorporate bike and pedestrian and roadway user safety items into all of our projects. So even though you're seeing this number here, this may be related only to those projects that are bike and path related, or maybe sidewalks or any of those items, but really that number is much higher. That is why our resurfacing allocations had to be readjusted, because we incorporate a lot of those bike and ped pedestrian improvements into our resurfacing projects. I know it seems it's resurfacing of the pavement, but it really is resurfacing of the pavement and safety improvements. So a lot of that funding is also included in those other projects as well. It's taken into account basically into all of our projects.
Thank you.
Mr. Bobinger, you're recognized.
Good morning. Thank you for the presentation. What part of these numbers includes MRP, your maintenance rating program, and how the programs and the roads are actually rated, and how FDOT goes in? And I know they hire contractors to do certain work on roads and whatnot, but it seems like over the last couple of years, the conditions of medians, crosswalks, sidewalks, curbs continue to deteriorate, and it looks like that those providers aren't out there doing their due diligence and keeping these places clean, cut, trimmed, blown off from debris and things that will cause injuries on sidewalks, curbs. I see it a lot on a lot of roads that I travel, and it seems like there's just these, either they're not getting rated properly, or someone's not on top of that part of it, because it all goes towards a lot of money being spent on roads, and yes, we need more money for bike pads and safer travels that aren't motorized, but sidewalks are a large part of that, and curbs and turning lanes. And
right,
if it's not rated properly and those people aren't held accountable, what do we do to change that?
Yes, there is a group that manages that. That is all done under operations. They manage all of the MRP ratings and adherence to all of that. I don't know the specifics of it, but it's taken into account when we build the work program of how much needs to be allocated for all of that. I can provide that information as well as a follow-up to the breakdown and what the process is for all of that. The work program, actually, I know our tentative work program actually opens up in July, but our work doesn't begin in July. We actually start earlier in the year in January. So between January and July, all the units are going through and identifying all their needs, including any of those that's going to be needed, any kind of additional budget and funding. That's part of the district needs assessment that goes into place balancing our tentative work program. And that information is shared from our operations unit. So we'll be able to provide that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Pizzo, you're recognized.
Thank you. Part of my question got answered by you. Very good presentation. Thank you. I'm curious though, going back to the funding breakdown, there's a lot of money sitting there in miscellaneous, over $152 million. What is it earmarked for? And I have a second question while you're pondering that. The bridge that was pushed back, I forget what road it was on. What's the age of that bridge and the viability? I know you can't give a lot of detail, but when we start pushing back, replacing or repairing bridges, I get a little concerned because I do travel that area.
Right, appreciate it. So under miscellaneous, what we have is maintenance, planning studies, landscaping, electrical vehicle improvements or components, charging facility improvements, toll plazas and drainage. So it's basically the catch-all kind of what falls out of the other major work mixes. And in terms of the bridge that was deferred, and then let me just get over there. This was actually, it's being deferred only by 1 year. And sometimes I know it seems like 1 year could be 12 months, but it could be a matter of months. In this case, we actually did find out the original letting on that was going to be in November of 23, fiscal year 24, and it got moved to December of the following year. So it's a 1 year deferral. And the reason why is because there was a bridge that had more significant improvement that needed to take place earlier. So we're looking to see if there's any way to maybe push in this project still within the 25, but at least not have a whole year delay on it. It's preventive measures. There's nothing critical on either of the bridges that would be sacrificing, I guess, the structure.
Very good. Ms. Mott?
Oh, sorry, and Brennan.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Peters. Chair's hiding your card.
Presentation. In your programming, how often or what's the frequency for resurfacing, particularly I-4? Because there's certain sections of I-4 that are really in bad shape. With the number of cars and trucks, I think that number has increased over the past few years. So I don't know if you use the same number of years for resurfacing. What is it that you use for I-4, the frequency?
I'm going to give in general, because our design group is really the one involved, and our maintenance group manages most of the pavement rehabilitation. There's a payment life. Typically, it's a 20-year payment life that we design to. That means that we usually come and resurface every 13 to 14 years, try to get ahead of when that payment life is reached. So the cycle for pavement resurfacing is usually between 13 to 14 years. Now, what often happens, and they assess the pavements, they do the roadway, our state materials office goes out and assesses the pavement and gives us ratings. And that is how we identify sections that really either need to be moved up or need to be adjusted. We look at our 3-year program for resurfacing. So we can include the design and the construction of that before it reaches that limit where it actually starts to really go down in terms of the pavement condition. So 13, 15 years is usually the cycle. For our interstate, that's more significant. They look at other projects that are in the work program as well. And if there's any way that we can combine maybe a capacity improvement job to be able to rehab the payment, that will be done as well. So that would also be done as well. So we can maximize maybe the amount of time contractors are out there and impacting the public.
Okay, now we're moving over. And back we have Ms. Mott and Ms. Moore. Oh, and Ms. Webster.
So thank you for the presentation. My questions are relative to the right of way. From my own knowledge, could you define severance damage? And also I wanted to find out what percentage of the right of way that's taking place is residential versus just clear land owned by an individual or a corporation?
These are some great questions. Of which I don't have that breakdown for you, to be honest with you, but we could certainly go back to the right of way department and gather that information. The severance cost would be anything that would be maybe for any kind of improvement because it's material and labor costs that is affecting that severance pay. So severance costs. So I would have to go back to them to find out exactly what that includes.
So typically there's a right of way payment for purchasing the land or taking the space that you need. But what is the severance damage?
That's what I will have to find out
Okay,
for you
gotcha.
to let you know specifically.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I appreciate your presentation. Mine isn't as complex, trust me. Mine centers around the bids that you all receive. You mentioned that you're basically at a single bid status. Is that a current trend or is that something that's recently started?
No, we're not at that's not overall. We experienced several of those over the last year.
Over the last year?
Yes,
Okay.
over the last year. We had several projects. In particular projects, there were projects that were maybe traffic signals, ITS related, electrical components,
Mhm.
small projects where there really wasn't a benefit to cost ratio because of the large size of a project.
Mhm.
Those smaller projects with that very specialized work tended to have very limited competition. And we did experience response of just one bidder for it. There was also projects, a resurfacing project that was out in rural county where contractors just were not going out for the amount of projects that we have seen as previously.
Mhm.
So what we would do is we would assess what that bid was in relation to what our estimate
Mhm.
and make a determination if it was better, maybe to bundle that project with another project later on so we can improve the competition and get more contractors to pursue the work. I think contractors have been strained over the last year for
Yeah.
the same reasons as we have in terms of supply chain challenges as well as material costs. They were definitely getting short-term estimates or would say costs for some of the work in the material. So they were hesitant to maybe pursue a job that maybe they felt that they would not be able to complete. We met with industry over the last year and we got some really good feedback from them in terms of they're seeing the same thing that we're seeing. It's very hard to keep up with the volatility when things are changing from month to month. We were instead, usually you try to keep a 6-month look ahead and 6 month back. and kind of do like a running kind of assessment of where you think you're gonna be. I mean, it was down to a couple months, just to see, and then we would see changes in prices for certain items. We saw increases of 100%, 150%
Right.
for certain items. So I think what all of that compounded, I think really limited to certain type of projects, the response that we received from the contract.
So there was no great concern on your part as to.
No, it's always a concern because we don't want to have to continue. It got to we did have to reject bids at some point
Did you?
because it was just a single bid and it was over 200%. And it was just not where we considered it and we said we could link this with another project and probably get better competition.
And that's responsible, and that's definitely responsible. And it piqued my interest simply because it was it was presented as a 5-year overview, and I was just wondering, like, at what point in the 5 years did this trend start, if it was a trend?
2022.
2022?
Yes, 2022, definitely. In the second part, we run from July until June. That's our fiscal year. Starting January of this year is where we started to see all that volatility and variability occur with our lettings.
I appreciate that. And just because also in a free market enterprise, it's to our benefit if there are more competitors, quite frankly.
Right.
Without compromising quality, for sure.
Right.
So I appreciate that. Thank you. That concludes.
Ms. Webster.
Thank you for your presentation. I know quite often we hear that you're going to add a bike lane to a project. And my question revolves around, is that just going to be a painted line on the road or some paint on the road? Or does it more often include some more protective measures for those bike riders? When we were looking at drawings for upcoming plans, quite often it was just the painted line on the road. So that's my question. Are we protecting our bicyclists?
Appreciate the question. Again, this is something that's really managed out of our planning and our design group, but I will take a stab at the answer because I think everybody makes the best attempt depending on the context of the roadway and the users on the roadway. What would be the opportunities to make it safe for everybody? So I think those are all options. I have seen it in several projects where they come in and they look at the different options and seeing, is there something that could be something that would require some kind of barrier separation? Maybe something that is not as intrusive, maybe just the pavement markings. It really does depend on the context of that roadway, the speed, and what other users are on the roadway to come up to that decision. Yes, they do consider them on. I think it's really important. I think measures when we have our public meetings and we get that feedback, if that's something that the public would like to see, to make the comment on it so that it be considered by the design individuals as they're working on the projects.
Okay, I think that does it. Ms. Alexander, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Alexander Corbin, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Great presentation. That concludes,
Mr. Fine.
oh, Mr. Fine. Sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Siasi Fine and I'm with the Florida Turnpike Enterprise. Today I'll be presenting Florida's Turnpike tentative work program for fiscal years 2024 through fiscal year 2028. In Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties, the Turnpike is proposing to fund $1.4 billion in major projects. So this PowerPoint that I'll be presenting is actually based on this tentative work program summary document. So whether you read this information or the information that I give you through the presentation, it should be the same. Okay, so Turnpike facilities are located in 6 FDOT districts in 19 counties. Here is a map which depicts the facilities that are in the Metro Plan Orlando area. So parts of the Turnpike main line have been around since 1957, but the Florida's Turnpike Enterprise is actually fairly new. We're 20 years old this year, and we started in 2002. As one FDOT team, we follow the department's vision and mission as we help meet the state's transportation needs ensuring value to customers, protecting investors, and managing the turnpike system in a business-like manner. Speaking about growing transportation needs, in the past 20 years, we've seen the following trends. So Florida's population has gone up by 31%. Registered vehicles have gone up by 37%. And specific to the turnpike system vehicle miles traveled has actually went up 80%. To help meet the transportation needs, the turnpike primarily receives funding through user tolls and concessions received at our service plazas. So with our revenue that's collected, how we use the money is first on operation and maintenance. This includes the cost to collect and process toll payments. Then we must pay off debt on bonds issued to construct major projects. Should be noted that due to our high credit rating, the turnpike has historically benefited from some of the lowest borrowing costs in the industry. So after that, we pay for renewal and replacement projects, and of course that's resurfacing and recurring improvements on the turnpike facilities. And then finally, we pay for capital improvements, and these are our interchange projects and our widening projects. So the turnpike has various ways of determining how projects get funded depending on the project type. All of our projects must demonstrate a transportation need, and off of that transportation need, it is then prioritized accordingly. Each year, we look at observed traffic data and future projections across the entire system. Also, we take into consideration environmental and economic feasibility. And most important is stakeholder input, which we receive throughout the entire project development process. And it's something we take very seriously. So the following projects are projects that have construction funding within the encompassed 5 years of our tentative work program. And that would be through fiscal years 2024 through fiscal year 2028. And I'll just list them off as we go. So starting in Osceola County, there's the widening of the turnpike main line from Parton Settlement Road to north of Osceola Parkway, including interchange improvements at milepost 249. And this project has construction funding in fiscal years 2024 and fiscal year 2026. The next project is the widening of the turnpike main line from US 192 to Parton Settlement Road. And that includes interchange improvements at milepost 242. And this project has constructions at fiscal year 2026. And the final project on the slide is the widening of the turnpike main line from milepost 239 to milepost 242. And with this project, there's also the construction of the full interchange at Nolte Road. And design build funds for this project are in fiscal years 2024 and fiscal year 2026. So continuing in Osceola County, there's the resurfacing of the Southern Connector, State Road 417, from milepost 0 to milepost 4. And this project has construction in fiscal year 2025. The next project is Canoe Creek Service Plaza parking improvements. This has construction in fiscal year 2026. And the final project on the slide is resurfacing of the turnpike main line from milepost 227 to milepost 235 with construction in fiscal year 2024. Now in Orange County, there is construction of a new interchange on the turnpike main line at Sand Lake Road. This project has construction funding in fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2026. There are interchange improvements on the turnpike main line at the Beachline Expressway West, State Road 528, and US 192. And this project has construction from fiscal year 2027 through fiscal year 2028. And the final project on the slide is the construction of a new interchange at the Turnpike Main Line and Taft Island Road. And this project has construction in fiscal year 2027. Still in Orange County, there are Tismo interchange improvements on the Pike Main Line at Ocoee State Road 50 with construction funding in fiscal year 2025. There is Tismo interchange improvements on the Beach Line Expressway West at John Young Parkway with construction funding in fiscal year 2026. Tismo interchange improvements on the Western Beltway at US 192 with construction in fiscal year 2025. And resurfacing of the Southern Connector State Road 417 from milepost 4 to milepost 6 with construction in fiscal year 2025. There's a singular project that spans from Orange to Brevard County. This is an ITS project on the Beach Line East, State Road 528, which has construction in fiscal year 2024. Now in Seminole County, there is the resurfacing of the Seminole Expressway, State Road 417, from milepost 50 to milepost 55 with construction in fiscal year 2025. There's the widening of the Seminole Expressway from Aloma Avenue to State Road 434 with interchange improvements at milepost 38, milepost 41, and milepost 44 with design build funding in fiscal year 2024. So for more information on all projects in the Turnpike's tentative work program, you can visit the that link right there, which is the FDOT work program public hearing website, and download the District 5 public hearing report when it becomes available. Turnpike projects in Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties can be found in this document. With that being said, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present the tentative work program. And if there are any questions, I'll take them now.
Thank you for presenting, Mr. Fine. Okay, our time is short, so we'll move Mr. Bobia.
Quick question. I've seen 2 reports of 5-year terms, 5-year work plans. I don't see anything where, I know we met a month or 2 ago, we talked about additional parking areas for trucking and that type of commerce. And I'm waiting to see when we're going to hear something back on that, because it's not obviously in this 5-year plan on either one of them that I've heard about adding any type of additional parking for, maybe you got Turkey Lake, you got Canoe Creek, you got a bunch of other plazas that definitely need to have additional truck parking for overnights to meet their legal requirements for 11-hour days, things like that. I don't see anything coming to us currently that shows us. The last time, I think we looked at 5 different locations that they were looking at property and areas to put parking to get these trucks off the right of way, to get them off ramps, to get them out of neighborhoods where people are parking and currently causing, issues.
Oh,
I'll just respond really quickly. DOT did just wrap up or is in the process of wrapping up the 5-site project development environmental study. We do have one of those sites fully funded right of way through construction. So one of those sites is fully funded in the work program, I believe, right of way starting next fiscal year, and then construction in the latter years of the work program. So still have some room to grow, a lot more spaces to fulfill that kind of future capacity. But one site chalked up.
Perfect. Thank you for the update.
Ms. Pizzo.
Question. Very good presentation. I'm going to be channeling Mr. O'Hanlon as well as myself. Why are we still building roads? Why are we still widening roads? And there's a lot of money that's going into this. And I see that a lot of it's development driven, and that's a whole nother topic we're not discussing today. But I just hate to see the billions of dollars that's spent widening and building these roads. We're mired in the past. Why aren't we finding those alternatives and investing in those alternatives? That's my comment. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Okay. Anyone else over this side? We all set here and going to this side? Okay, I think we're good. Mr. Fine, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
That completes our final presentation. There are several items under general information in tab 4 in your packets. Our next in-person CAC meeting will be January 25th, 2003. Please remember to RSVP because this is very important. We need to know if we will have a quorum. The other CAC meeting dates for 2023 are included in your agendas. The next Metro Plan Orlando board meeting, as I said, will be next Wednesday on the 14th. At this time, do we have any committee members wanting to make final comments? Mr. Coleman.
Earlier in the agenda, when it was Mr. McCaskey. I'm not sure if he's still here. Mr. Caskey's last thing. I didn't get a chance to vote on it. Let me press my thing. Oh, yeah. I'm not a fan of links making any amendments to their financial plans or anything of that nature. I think links, I've tried to speak to them. They need to spend more time working about efficiency of the application and just reliability first. You know, I'm anti-electric vehicles at this point when it comes to links. I'm anti an extra $2 million on top of the already $10-12 million budget for it. I think there's sometimes more roaches on the bus than people. Buses are not even in rotation. I took the bus for 5 months this year. I almost lost my job twice. I am completely anti-links, and thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Coleman. Okay. We have now come to the second public comment period. If any members of the public wish to comment or are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. When we send you a prompt, unmute your microphone, and after that, you'll be recognized. Please state your name and address for the record. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who wishes to make a comment?
There are no hands raised on the virtual side, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we have any members of the public attending in person who wish to make a public comment?
I have not received any requests.
Were there any written comments that were submitted before the meeting?
We did not receive any written comments before this meeting, Mr. Chair.
Well, okay, with that, I want to say thank you to all of the board members for all of your time and all of your work that you put in here. Thank you to our guests and partners here at MetroPlan, and for sure, thank you to all of the staff here at MetroPlan for the work that you do and the support that you give us. You really make life easy for me, and I need it most of the time. Thank you so very much. And with that, I want to say Merry Christmas and have a Happy New Year, and we are adjourned.
See you next year.